The sun dipped low over Oak Ridge Meadows, spilling golden light across the quiet suburban streets. It was the kind of neighborhood people dreamed of: manicured lawns, picket fences, tree-lined sidewalks, and an air of perfect harmony. But behind the carefully trimmed hedges and whitewashed mailboxes, an unspoken tension lurked, one that Alex Parker was about to discover the hard way. Alex had lived here for nearly 2 years now. At 36, he was finally where he thought he belonged. After a decade of working overtime at his IT job and saving every penny, he had bought his dream home, a modest but beautiful 2-story house with soft gray siding and a porch swing where he often spent evenings sipping coffee. He loved the peace, the quiet hum of sprinklers, and the distant laughter of kids playing tag. This was what he had worked for: stability, safety, and belonging. But what he didn't know was that in Oak Ridge Meadows, peace came at a price. The first sign came on a Thursday morning in late spring. Alex stepped outside to grab the mail, expecting the usual stack of bills and flyers. Instead, a stark white envelope, stamped in bold red letters, HOA notice, caught his eye. Frowning, he tore it open right there on the porch. His heart sank as he scanned the first line. You are hereby notified of a violation of Oak Ridge Meadows HOA property guidelines. The letter went on to state that his recently installed backyard fence was non-compliant with community regulations and must be removed or replaced within 10 days. Failure to comply, it warned, would result in daily fines of $250 and potential legal action. Alex blinked, rereading the letter twice, trying to make sense of it. He had checked the guidelines before installing the fence. He was meticulous about these things. In fact, 3 houses down, the Jennings family had the exact same style of fence, yet theirs stood untouched, unchallenged. At first he laughed softly, assuming it was a clerical mistake. He even thought about calling the HOA office that afternoon to clear things up. But something deep in his gut made him pause. He had heard whispers before, quiet complaints from neighbors at block parties, stories of families being targeted, of selective enforcement of rules, of the HOA flexing its power when it suited them. Still, Alex wanted to believe the best. He folded the letter, tucked it into his back pocket, and decided not to overthink it. That night, though, another envelope slid under his door. This one wasn't a warning, it was a threat. The tone was sharp, cold, and unyielding. Failure to comply will result in immediate fines and legal proceedings initiated by Oak Ridge Meadows HOA. Continued violations may impact your property ownership rights. Alex stared at the page, his stomach knotting tighter with every word. It wasn't just about a fence anymore. This was something deeper. The HOA wasn't asking, they were commanding. The next day he called the HOA office, hoping for reason. A woman named Carla, the HOA secretary, answered with a chirpy voice that quickly turned icy when he explained the situation. Mr. Parker, your fence clearly violates Article 3, Section 5 of the Community Guidelines, she said flatly. That's impossible, Alex replied, frustration edging into his voice. The Jennings fence is identical to mine. No one's bothered them. Carla paused for a beat, then said sharply, Mr. Parker, I'd advise you not to compare your property to others. Every case is different. And with that, she hung up. Something clicked in Alex's mind then. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was targeting. Over the next few days, he noticed strange things happening. 2 HOA board members he barely knew drove past his house slowly, more than once taking photos of his yard. A neighbor casually mentioned overhearing the HOA president, Gregory Miles, complain about Alex breaking rules at a recent board meeting, even though Alex had never been invited to discuss the issue himself. It felt like they were building a case against him. By the following week, a 3rd letter arrived. This one marked final notice. The HOA was demanding an immediate $2,500 compliance deposit to avoid further penalties. If he didn't pay, they threatened to place a lien on his home. Alex sat in his kitchen that night, surrounded by letters that screamed with authority and menace. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He kept pacing between the table and the window, watching the quiet, perfect street outside, and wondering how something that seemed so peaceful could turn so hostile so quickly. The more he researched, the more horrifying it became. Online forums were full of stories just like his. Homeowners bullied into submission, drained of thousands of dollars, and in some cases, even losing their homes entirely. One man in Texas had been sued over planting the wrong color flowers. A woman in Arizona had her property seized over unpaid fines that started at just $300. Alex realized something crucial. This wasn't just a fight about a fence. It was about power, control, and intimidation. And if he didn't stand up now, the HOA would keep pushing until they had taken far more than just his fence. But Alex wasn't the kind of man to back down when something felt unjust. That quiet determination he carried, the same one that helped him work double shifts to buy this home, began to rise inside him. He could feel it burning, small at first, then hotter by the day. He wasn't going to be bullied, not by Gregory Miles, not by the HOA board, not by anyone. What Alex didn't know, though, was how deep the HOA's influence ran, and how far they were willing to go to break someone who dared to resist. This was only the beginning. The next morning, Alex sat on his porch, coffee mug in hand, staring blankly at the stack of HOA letters spread across the small wooden table. The birds chirped softly in the distance, neighbors strolled past with their dogs, and the world around him looked normal. But for Alex, everything had changed. The peat he once felt in Oak Ridge Meadows had cracked, replaced by an unsettling weight pressing against his chest. He thought back to when he first moved here. It had been a dream for him and his wife, Emily. 2 years ago, they'd left behind a cramped apartment in the city for the quiet promise of suburban life. Alex had worked tirelessly, pulling double shifts, cutting expenses, and turning down vacations just so they could afford the down payment. Emily had cried when they first walked into the house together, running her hands across the smooth wooden banister and whispering, "This is ours." Back then, Alex believed he'd found the perfect neighborhood. The HOA had seemed harmless at first, a group of homeowners ensuring the community stayed beautiful and property values remained high. During his first week, he even attended a welcome barbecue organized by the board. He remembered shaking hands with Gregory Miles, the HOA president, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a fixed politician's smile. Gregory had been charming that day, telling Alex, "We take pride in Oak Ridge Meadows. Everyone follows the rules, and in return, we all live in harmony." Alex had nodded, thinking it sounded reasonable. Rules meant order, and order meant peace, or so he thought. For the first year, everything went smoothly. Alex mowed his lawn every Saturday morning, repainted the porch when the wood chipped, and even attended a few community meetings. He felt like he belonged here, but slowly subtle things began to bother him. He noticed how Gregory and a few board members seemed to favor certain families, letting them build large patios or install flashy solar panels, while others were scolded for leaving trash cans out too long. A neighbor named Linda whispered to him once, "If Gregory likes you, you can get away with anything. If he doesn't." She didn't finish the sentence, but the warning in her eyes was enough. At the time, Alex brushed it off. He believed in staying neutral, keeping his head down and avoiding drama. That all changed when he installed his fence. It wasn't just any fence. Alex had saved for months to buy one that matched the aesthetic of his house, a clean, elegant cedarwood design. He'd studied the HOA handbook carefully to ensure it complied with the rules. He even checked with a local contractor who assured him the design met every guideline. So when the first violation letter arrived, Alex had been shocked but not worried. He thought it was just a mistake. But by the time the second, harsher letter came, that illusion had shattered. Emily was the first to sense the change in him. That night, she found him sitting alone in the living room, staring at the letter for what felt like hours. "Alex," she said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's just a misunderstanding. Call them tomorrow and explain." "I already called," he interrupted softly. "They're not listening." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "They don't care about the rules, Em. This isn't about the fence." He looked up at her, his jaw tight, his voice low. "They're targeting us." Emily sat down beside him, silent for a moment. Why us? Alex shook his head. I don't know, but I'm starting to think Gregory's got something against me. Maybe I rubbed him the wrong way. Maybe it's something else. But they're not treating everyone the same. I've seen at least 3 other fences like ours, and none of them are getting fined. Emily bit her lip, glancing toward the window where their backyard stood in perfect order. So what do we do? For the first time in years, Alex didn't have an answer. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning through possibilities. Should he take the fence down? Pay the fine? Hire a lawyer? Every option felt like surrender, and the thought made his chest tighten with frustration. By 3 a.m., he found himself sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, typing HOA abuse stories into Google. What he discovered horrified him. There were hundreds of accounts from homeowners across the country, stories of relentless fines, selective enforcement, and outright intimidation. One man in Florida had been charged $75,000 in penalties over minor landscaping violations. Another woman in Nevada described being harassed until she sold her house for less than half its value. And in one case that made his stomach turn, a retired veteran in Arizona lost his home entirely after refusing to remove an unauthorized shed, even though the HOA's own bylaws allowed it. Alex scrolled for hours, reading every word, and with each story his anxiety deepened, but so did his resolve. This wasn't just happening to him. This was systemic. The more he read, the clearer it became. Many HOAs weren't just about maintaining appearances. They were power structures, small-scale kingdoms where certain individuals ruled with unchecked authority. And Gregory Miles, he realized, was exactly that kind of leader. By dawn, Alex had made a decision. He wasn't going to roll over and comply. He wasn't going to hand over thousands of dollars to a group abusing its power. And he definitely wasn't going to let them intimidate him into silence. He would fight back. But he had no idea just how ugly things were about to get. The next week crawled by like a storm brewing on the horizon. The silence of Oak Ridge Meadows had changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, charged with something unspoken. Alex could feel it every time he stepped outside. Neighbors who used to wave and smile now glanced away. Conversations hushed when he walked past, and every time a car slowed in front of his house, his chest tightened, half expecting someone from the HOA to deliver another notice. On Tuesday morning, the fear became real. A 4th letter arrived, but this one was different. The envelope bore the HOA's seal, but the message inside was colder than any before. Mr. Parker, as you have failed to comply with repeated violation notices, the Oak Ridge Meadows HOA board has voted unanimously to initiate legal action against you. If you do not resolve your violations within 5 business days, you will be subject to a $250 and the placement of a lien on your property. Alex stared at the paper, his hands trembling. Legal action. A lien. Losing his home. It all suddenly felt real. Emily walked in from the kitchen, a dish towel in her hand. Alex, what is it now? He handed her the letter silently. She read it, her face pale, and set it down carefully as if touching it too hard would make things worse. This is insane, she whispered. They can't just... They can, Alex cut in, his voice low but steady. And they will. That's what makes them dangerous. Emily sat down, rubbing her temples. But why us? Why are they coming after you? Alex didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out the window, watching Gregory Miles walk past their driveway with 2 other board members, clipboard in hand. They didn't wave. They didn't look up. They just scribbled notes and moved on. It felt calculated. That night, Alex began digging deeper, not just into HOA abuses, but into Gregory Miles himself. What he found unsettled him. Gregory wasn't just the HOA president. He owned several rental properties in Oak Ridge Meadows, giving him significant influence over the board. 3 of the 5 board members were his close friends, practically guaranteeing unanimous votes on any motion he proposed. And worse, Alex found posts on local forums hinting at Gregory's history of selective enforcement and personal vendettas. One comment stuck with him. "Cross Gregory Miles and he'll make your life hell. Ask the Sanders family." They moved out after 3 years of nonstop fines. This wasn't about his fence anymore. This was about power and intimidation. But Alex wasn't backing down. By Thursday, things escalated again. Alex came home from work to find bright orange stickers slapped on his fence post reading, "Violation, remove immediately." 2 board members were still standing there when he arrived, taking pictures of his yard. "Excuse me," Alex called out, trying to keep his voice calm. "What are you doing on my property?" One of them, a stocky man named Paul Benson, turned without a smile. "Documenting ongoing violations. This is HOA property jurisdiction." "This is my yard," Alex shot back, stepping closer. Paul shrugged. "Your yard, our rules. You'll learn that eventually." Something inside Alex snapped, but before he could speak, Emily pulled him back, whispering, "Not here, not now." The 2 board members smirked and walked away slowly, as if daring him to follow. That night, Alex sat with Emily, weighing his options. Paying the fine would drain their savings, but fighting the HOA in court could cost even more. He needed leverage, and he needed it fast. So he began talking to neighbors, knocking on doors, asking if anyone else had been targeted. Most were polite but evasive, unwilling to get involved. A few quietly admitted they'd had disputes of their own, but begged Alex not to use their names. "Gregory has ways of making life miserable," one whispered before shutting the door. By the weekend, Alex had collected enough stories to see a pattern. Families who spoke out were fined heavily, while Gregory's inner circle could break rules freely. He realized something important. Gregory counted on fear to keep people silent. But Alex wasn't afraid anymore. Late one night, Alex sat at his laptop drafting a letter, not to the HOA, but to a lawyer. He detailed everything: the letters, the fines, the targeted harassment, and the unequal enforcement. He sent it off, not knowing what would come next, but certain of one thing: this wasn't going to end quietly. 2 days later, the HOA doubled his fines. When he checked his mailbox that afternoon, there was a new notice. "Due to your failure to comply and continued defiance, daily fines have increased to $500 per day, effective immediately." Emily's hands shook when she read it. "This is getting out of control, Alex." "That's the point," he said grimly. "They want to break us before we fight back." But Alex wasn't broken yet. Things came to a head at the next HOA meeting. The community center buzzed with quiet tension as Alex walked in, letters clutched in his hand. Gregory sat at the head of the long table, flanked by board members, his expression calm but sharp. When Alex approached the microphone during open session, he felt dozens of eyes on him. "My name is Alex Parker," he began, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "I've lived here for 2 years. I followed the rules when I installed my fence. I checked the guidelines, hired a licensed contractor, and made sure everything was compliant. But for weeks I've been harassed with fines and threats, while others with identical fences have been ignored. I want an explanation." Gregory leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers together. "Mr. Parker," he said smoothly, "the HOA enforces community standards for everyone equally. If you've received notices, it's because you violated those standards. Then why haven't the Jennings been cited?" Alex shot back. "Or the Wilsons, or 3 other homes on my street with the exact same fence?" A murmur rippled through the room. Gregory's jaw tightened, but his smile didn't falter. "This meeting," he said coldly, "is not the place to question the board's decisions." Alex stepped closer to the table, lowering his voice but sharpening his words. "If you keep threatening me, Gregory, we'll see each other in court." For the first time, Gregory's expression cracked. His smile disappeared, replaced by a flash of something darker: anger, maybe even fear. But before he could respond, Paul Benson leaned into the microphone and said, "Meeting adjourned." And just like that, it was over. But Alex knew deep down that the real fight was only beginning. The days after the HOA meeting felt different. The quiet suburban street no longer looked peaceful to Alex. It felt hostile, like an enemy territory where every glance carried hidden judgment and every whisper carried his name. The board hadn't backed down. In fact, their attacks intensified. 2 days after the meeting, Alex received another letter. This one was unlike anything he'd seen before. It wasn't just a fine or a warning. It was a summons. The Oak Ridge Meadows Homeowners Association has filed a lawsuit in county court seeking injunctive relief, damages, and recovery of attorney fees. Alex read the words 3 times, but they didn't make sense at first. His throat went dry. Emily found him standing in the kitchen, letter trembling in his hand. "A lawsuit," she whispered, snatching the papers. This isn't real. They can't actually take us to court over a fence." Alex sat down heavily, his head in his hands. "It's not about the fence anymore," he muttered. "It's about breaking us." Emily sat beside him, silent, her fingers clutching his arm tightly. For a long time they just sat there, the weight of the situation pressing down on them like a stone. That night, Alex called David Ramirez, the lawyer he'd emailed a week earlier. David had handled several HOA-related cases before and had a reputation for being both sharp and relentless. "Alex," David said over the phone, his voice calm but firm, "I looked at your case. I'll be honest, it's bad. They've been stacking violations against you on purpose." "I know," Alex said through clenched teeth. "Can they win?" David paused for a moment. "If we do nothing, yes. But if we fight back, and I mean really fight back, we can turn this around. But it's going to get ugly." Alex didn't hesitate. "Then let's make it ugly." The following week, David filed a countersuit. They accused the HOA of selective enforcement, harassment, and abuse of authority. It was a bold move, one that immediately shook the board. Within 24 hours, Alex noticed the change. Paul Benson, the board member who had mocked him before, walked past his house but didn't make eye contact this time. Carla, the HOA secretary, sent an email instead of calling, her tone suddenly polite, too polite. But Gregory Miles, he was different. Gregory didn't back down. In fact, he seemed more determined than ever to destroy Alex. 3 nights later, just past midnight, Alex heard footsteps outside his window. He crept to the blinds and peered out into the darkness. A man stood by his fence, snapping pictures with his phone. Alex yanked open the door and shouted, "Hey!" The man bolted, disappearing into the shadows, but Alex caught a glimpse of him. It was Gregory. Alex's anger burned hotter than ever, but David advised him to stay calm. "They're trying to provoke you," the lawyer warned. "If you lose your temper, they'll use it against you in court." But Gregory didn't stop. Over the next few days, Alex found anonymous flyers stuffed in his mailbox, claiming he was destroying the neighborhood's value and costing his neighbors thousands. Someone spray-painted "Rule Breaker" on his driveway in dripping red letters. Emily was terrified. "Alex, this isn't just about money anymore. They're trying to humiliate us." Alex clenched his fist but said nothing. He was done being scared. The court hearing arrived 2 weeks later. The small courtroom was packed with neighbors, board members, and curious onlookers. Alex sat at the defendant's table beside David, his jaw set, his heart pounding like a drum. Gregory sat across the room, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, his expression smug and confident. When the judge entered, the room went silent. The proceedings began, and for hours Gregory's attorney painted Alex as a defiant homeowner, refusing to follow simple rules. But then David stood, and everything shifted. He brought out photographic evidence of 3 other homes in Oak Ridge Meadows with the exact same fence design, none of which had ever received a single violation. He presented copies of HOA meeting notes showing Gregory personally pushing for Alex's fines while excusing his friend's violations. And then came the bombshell. David introduced an anonymous email they had received the night before. It contained screenshots of internal HOA chats between Gregory and other board members. One message from Gregory himself read, Make an example of Parker. He thinks he's above us. I want him bled dry." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge slammed her gavel for silence, her expression sharp. Gregory's attorney stammered, trying to explain, but the damage was done. For the first time since this nightmare began, Alex felt the balance of power shift. The HOA's case crumbled that day. The judge ordered a temporary halt on all fines and scheduled a follow-up hearing to investigate the allegations of harassment and abuse of power. Gregory left the courtroom red-faced, his perfect composure cracked. As he passed Alex, he leaned close and whispered, his voice low and venomous. "This isn't over." Alex stared back, unflinching. "No," he said softly. "It's just starting." That night, Alex stood on his porch, looking out over the quiet street. The air was cool, the stars sharp against the dark sky. For the first time in weeks, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But deep down, he knew Gregory wasn't the type to accept defeat. The HOA still had power, influence, and resources. And Alex had just declared war. The real battle hadn't been won yet. It was only about to get darker. The days following the courtroom showdown felt strangely quiet, but Alex knew better. Gregory Miles wasn't finished. He could feel it, an uneasiness in the air, like the calm before a storm. Emily tried to reassure him. "Maybe this is it," she said softly one morning, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Maybe they finally backed off. But Alex had seen the look in Gregory's eyes as he left the courtroom, the look of a man humiliated and hell-bent on revenge. And he was right. 3 days later, David, Alex's attorney, called with urgent news. "They've called an emergency HOA board meeting," David said. "It's closed door. No homeowners allowed." Alex frowned. "What does that mean?" David hesitated before replying. "It means they're plotting something big." Sure enough, the next day Alex received a certified letter from the HOA. Inside was a new demand. Effective immediately, all HOA legal fees incurred during this dispute, totaling $47,600, must be reimbursed by Mr. Alex Parker within 30 days. Emily gasped when she read it. $47,000? That's insane. They can't do this. Alex clenched his jaw. "Oh, they can," he said bitterly. "And they will, unless we stop them." David filed a motion to block the demand, but Gregory had already mobilized his allies. Overnight, Alex became the villain of Oak Ridge Meadows. Some neighbors wouldn't even look at him. Others whispered when he walked past. Online HOA forums buzzed with angry posts accusing him of ruining the neighborhood. But Alex refused to break. Late one evening, as Alex sat reviewing legal documents, his phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. When he answered, a shaky female voice came through the line. "Mr. Parker? My name's Lydia Carter. I used to work for Gregory." Alex straightened in his chair. "I'm listening." Lydia hesitated, her voice trembling. I can't stay quiet anymore. Gregory's been using HOA funds illegally, paying contractors under the table, pocketing kickbacks, and he's covering it all up." Alex's heart raced. "Do you have proof?" "I have everything," she whispered. "Emails, invoices, bank transfers. But if he finds out I talked to you, you'll be protected," Alex promised. "Meet me tomorrow." The next day, in a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town, Lydia slid a USB drive across the table. Her hands were trembling. "Everything you need is on here," she whispered. "Take him down." Alex gave the drive to David, who spent the entire night going through the files. By morning, his voice was shaking when he called. "Alex, this isn't just an HOA dispute anymore," David said. "Gregory's been embezzling thousands from the community for years. If we present this to the court, he's done." The second court date arrived like a storm. The courtroom buzzed with tension as homeowners, reporters, and board members filled every seat. Gregory entered looking confident, too confident. But when David began presenting Lydia's evidence, everything changed. Emails, fake invoices, hidden accounts. contractor kickbacks, every detail laid bare. Whispers erupted in the courtroom, neighbors leaning close, exchanging shocked looks. Gregory's attorney tried to object, but the judge overruled him. And then David delivered the knockout blow, an audio recording Lydia had captured weeks earlier. Gregory's voice filled the courtroom. "Parker thinks he can win. I'll bury him. And if I have to fake violations to make it happen, so be it. The board works for me." The room fell silent. For the first time, Gregory's mask cracked. The judge leaned forward, her voice cold and steady. "Mr. Miles, this court is opening a full investigation into your management of HOA funds and authority." Gregory's face went pale. Within days, the investigation uncovered massive financial misconduct. Gregory was removed from his position, arrested for fraud, and banned from serving on any HOA board for life. The HOA board was dissolved, a new one elected, and all wrongful fines against Alex were erased. Neighbors who once avoided him now stopped by his house, some apologizing, others offering congratulations. But Alex didn't gloat. Standing on his porch that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. This wasn't victory, it was survival. Just as life began returning to normal, Alex received one final letter, this time from Gregory himself. It was handwritten, messy, desperate. "You think you've won, Parker, but this isn't over. You took everything from me. One day, I'll take it back." Alex stared at the letter for a long time, then quietly folded it and locked it away in a drawer. Because deep down, he knew something chilling. Gregory wasn't done, and Oak Ridge Meadows would never be the same again. Alex's fight with the HOA had finally reached its end, but as he stood outside his home, breathing in the cool night air, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling lingering in his chest. The victory was his, yes, but it hadn't come without scars. He had faced sleepless nights, endless letters, and the weight of threats that could have taken everything from him. Yet in the end, his courage proved stronger than their power. Still, somewhere deep inside, Alex knew this wasn't the last battle. The whispers around the neighborhood, the bitter stares from certain board members, and Gregory's cold promise, "This isn't over," all reminded him that the fight for freedom inside one's own home was far from finished. And as he turned to look at the streetlights glowing faintly in the silence, one thought refused to leave his mind. If this happened to him, how many others were still out there, silently suffering, waiting for their moment to stand up and fight back?